that you're here. Love to see the friendly faces and the people that we know. Beth, it's so great that you're here. Hi, Lindsay. I hope you're feeling better. Hi, Peter. Hi, Rosie. Hi, everybody. I hope you guys can hear me. And if you can just say something in the chat. My name is Debbie Rosen, and I am one of the owners of the Study Pro. And Lindsay on the other side is monitoring the chat, as well as Destiny. And we wanted to welcome you today. I'm going to formally welcome Nicole in just a few minutes. So good morning. I hope everybody can hear me okay. And please feel free to use the chat this morning. We are going to have an interactive presentation, we hope. And we're so excited that Nicole is here, and I will give you the full explanation of our long history here in just a minute. But I wanted to introduce the Study Pro and introduce her more formally. And so I wanted to first, of course, welcome everyone. If you don't know who the Study Pro is, you know, I tend to always say the same things about executive function and what we do. But of course, these are incredibly important skills for students and for all of us as humans. It's really the cognitive skills that allow us to make and achieve a goal. And oftentimes they're really misunderstood if students aren't doing as well as we know that they can be, what their potential is. We know that often sitting in that gap of where they're performing and where the potential is a missing skill. And these are the types of skills that you're seeing here on the slide. And it's the type of skills that we work on, we focus on with our students at the Study Pro. And so we do that in a lot of different ways. We teach an underlying system in our study skills course. We have a homework center, which is what I'm sitting in, to help kids practice the skills. We have coaching to help them personalize the skills. And so the goal that we have is really to help students just realize that, you know what, it's not me that is broken or that can't get this work done or is struggling in this particular subject. It's just really a missing skill. And so that's the goal that we have with all of our students. As I mentioned, we have a study skills class. You know, I was talking with a parent the other day, and we're saying, you know, it's interesting because when you think about students and about how, you know, how much pressure is these days, we spend a lot of time in their sports schedule, and they really understand, you know, what they need to do to go to practice every day and to to compete in the games. But we just really haven't taught them as much what the system is to learn. And how can I learn how to learn? How do I know how to study for my tests? How do I know how to take my notes? How do I know how to plan backwards? And that's really what we do in the study skills course. We offer it during the school year. We're starting again in January 11th, and then we offer it during the summer, each week or most weeks during the summer. And we do that for 6th through 8th and 9th through 12th at kind of a higher level, and then 4th and 5th at kind of more of an introductory level. And that is a little bit more growth mindset based and age appropriate for elementary school, getting ready to go into middle school. And then we also are well known, I think, for our training and our professional development. So we do work in schools. We have at Study Pro each month in the winter, we'll be holding a professional development training for teachers, for learning specialists, for any professional that wants to learn more about how to identify what executive function skills are those barriers that are sitting in the gap of skills that may be getting in the way. And that's led by Lindsay Toms, who, as I mentioned, is the co-owner of Study Pro. Let's see, sorry. And then, of course, we have this series, and upcoming, we have a couple of, we are actually scheduled through May, and so we have a number of very exciting speakers. But coming up in January, we have Dr. Karen Varblow, and she really talks about something called the no-go model. That's KNOW. So if you ever ask yourself the question, how come my kids know what they have to do, but they don't go to do it or in that direction? She has a lot of great answers for that. And we're going to, of course, touch on a bit of that today. And then we have two experts from Sticks Root Group, and they're going to be sharing more about kind of ADHD at the different stages and what you can expect to see from adolescence, or excuse me, all the way through adolescence. So with that, I'm going to start my introduction to Nicole by sharing that we're doing something really special together, and something that we've been asked to do by a number of our parents, which is we're actually holding an intensive workshop in January and February. So depending on whether you join the workshop remotely or in person. And it's really because so many people ask the question, what do I say and what do I do in situations that where I feel overwhelmed, where I'm not sure how to manage my own emotions, where I'm working on my own emotional regulation, or my child is working on theirs. And how do I actually dig into the topics that we're going to be talking about today a little bit more deeply? And so we have 3 sessions that are either offered remotely, if that's more convenient for you, January 30th, February 6th, and February 13th over Zoom, or we have one in-person session, which we hope you come to. We've been doing a little bit more in person lately, and that's been great. And that's on February 20th. These are all Fridays. And so if you're interested in that, we're going to be sending the link. It will be studypro.com/parents. We're going to be sending the link. That is not up yet, but it is about to be. But we'll be sending the link to the PDF and hopefully the website too by the time we get the recording of this going. And you can also email, as you see at the bottom here, info@thestudypro.com. So we really do hope you join us. Nicole, as you'll see here in a minute, is going to do an excellent job. It will do an excellent job, certainly in this topic, and helping us feel like we're really armed with the skills that we need to make things a little bit lighter and feel more in control. And with that, we will go ahead and introduce my very dear friend, Nicole McGarry. So as many of you know, and I share openly, I started the Study Pro based on the experience that I had with my son, who is now 26, living independently in New York, yes. And he worked for years with Nicole, and she has been life-changing for me personally. So she is, of course, a child and adolescence therapist. She focuses on kids with ADHD and emotional regulation challenges. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. But what I loved about her is not only the warmth of her heart and the depth of her knowledge, but how real she is and how much she really helps to bring these things home and allow us to know what to say and do in the moment. And as you'll hear some of the favorite quotes that I have, I'm sure throughout the day, the need, what is the need behind the behavior, and really understanding what behavior is so that we know the direction to move. So with that, I'm going to stop my share so that you can start your share, Nicole, and tell you how special it is that you're here with us today, and how special you are in our lives, and how much my son still credits you with his upbringing, I think even more than me. So
I doubt that, but thank you so much for that warm welcome. I think for any of us that are in the community of, helping kiddos who maybe have neurodivergence or who have an experience of ADHD or very intense emotions, we really do form a community of others that get it, right? And what you've done with the Study Pro in terms of getting behind that we don't just always need a subject specific tutor, we need to learn how to learn, and that can ease all kinds of anxiety and self-doubt and those painful like self-shame feelings, right? Like we're all coming at this from different directions to support this community of really, really capable humans that just sometimes have really large feelings, or at least that's the lane I'm in, is the feelings. And so I'm excited to be here today. And my favorite thing in the world is supporting parents, right, who are raising kiddos who are navigating their process, right? How their brains work and how to manage their big feelings when they happen, and how that looks. And knowing this time of year, I was thinking this morning, just like every parent, that we have decided that we need to redecorate our entire home for a 3-week period of time, and like there's all these festivities going on, and it's really fun and it's really stressful. And so I thought, wow, this seminar is about conflict right? And what can happen. But my hope is that everyone walks away feeling part of a community that gets it. And we are not here to judge. We're here to support. We're here to understand. We're here to help you as a parent feel the skills, understand the skills to get to a place within yourself where you can have a little bit of peace, a little bit of calm in the middle of everything that's going on, right? This isn't to give you a list of 50 things you need to do and be an expert in by the end of this so that your kid won't freak out, right? Like, this is how we're all going to survive together, and understand what conflict looks like, and then where we can intervene and keep ourselves sane in the process. So that's my hope. All right, without further ado, we will get going on conflict specifically. So I refer to this a lot in sessions and in my own life. It's conflict is like climbing a ladder. It starts possibly low level. Sometimes it can explode in, but sometimes we start with an initial triggering event. Something happens and it causes some negative thoughts, right? We start to tell a story somewhere inside ourselves, whether we're conscious of this or not, about what that event means, right? What's happening. So we start to tell a story. And then based on that story, we start to have emotions related to that story and what the outcome of that story potentially is. And our emotions cause physical changes in our body, right? Our nervous system responds to that story, whether the story is accurate or not. Doesn't matter. What story we're telling, our body will respond. And then when our body gets to a certain level, we will act. We will take some kind of action to protect ourselves, to calm the situation. Right now, we can sometimes act impulsively, right? This ladder goes super fast. And other times it's sort of this slow boil, and then there we go, right? So, what's important to know is where are our areas of influence when we notice ourselves on that ladder? And as parents, how can we not climb the ladder with our kid? Let's say we're very aware that our child is like working their way up that ladder. How do we not join them each step of the way? Where are exits? Right? So that we don't necessarily reach two flipped lids. And we'll get into what that is a little bit later on. But what's important is, let's think about a triggering event. A triggering event for our child might be, I have a math test tomorrow. Right. And so I have been coping with the negative thoughts of, I stink at math. I'm no good at this. No matter how hard I try, I'm never going to succeed. And the emotional response to that is, I feel shame. I feel less than. I don't feel worthy. I'm never going to be smart. Right. I feel pretty down on myself. The physical symptoms of that say, I need to move away from this stimulus, right? So I have now instead watched YouTube on my phone for like 45 minutes, right? Because why would I go near my desk and why would I approach like the start of studying for this math test? Because that is just like, that makes me feel like there's a threat, I'm in danger, right? And so the action there is I have stared at my phone, right? Now, when a parent comes in, right, and says, did you study for your math test? What are you doing? How long have you been on YouTube? Now we have another triggering event, right? So now we have the triggering event of parent is noticing me and is asking me to approach something that is overwhelming, flooding, I already felt cruddy about, and now I'm a bad kid because I was on YouTube, right? And you are taking away my dopamine hit, which was at least making me feel kind of fun, right? Like every 30 seconds or so, I was getting something really enjoyable, right? Or at least partly enjoyable. And if I didn't like that one, another one was coming in 20 seconds. So it's this cycle, right? And we're interrupting that. So then they have a negative thought. You don't get me. You're so overprotective. What are you even talking about? I wasn't even on that long. Right. So they're having these negative thoughts that you don't understand them. You don't get what their life is like. You don't understand what other kids are doing. Their emotional responses reject that. right? Like, I'm not going to get close to them. I'm not going to listen to them. Physical symptoms might be anger, right? And now we have impulsive, lashing out attitudes, rolled eyes, whatever. So it's understanding where we are in that cycle so we don't have to pile on. I don't know about you, but when my teen rolls their eyes at me and I have literally like laid it out so beautifully and I've said it nicely and I've been very reasonable and I get this response, part of me is like, how dare you? Like, I'm not going to take that. Or what kind of parent am I that my kid does that? And then I get the double whammy, which is what kind of therapist am I that my kid is also doing that, right? Like, I should know how to do this better, right? So we have all these negative thoughts, my own stories. What am I telling or believing about myself as a parent that my kid is having this issue with their nervous system? And then how does that impact what I choose to say, how I act, how I behave? Do I immediately ground them until college? Do I immediately impulsively take away their screens for the rest of the week, which might feel like cutting off both their arms and hitting them with them? Like, it's really interesting for us to pay attention to, how did I select my intervention? From which brain of my own did I come? Right. So, this is why I get excited about, we cannot always control like our kids' big emotions, but we can understand ours better. And through the gift of co regulation, through the gift of our nervous system being in sync, being in our own calmer state, right? We don't have to be perfect here. We naturally will exude a different level of safety, understanding, support, possibly, or just quiet, safe space that allows our child's nervous system to adjust a little bit. And so instead of climbing the ladder, we're working the problem a little bit more. What I like about this idea of the ladder is that you can get off at any point in time. You can get all the way to physical symptoms. You can, have grounded them for life. You're like, whoops, like I'm all the way to impulsive action. You can say, wait. I want to get off. Like, let's just pause. Let's just pause for a second, right? And that is something you can control because you can do that. So a different sort of visual for this is we have a painful experience, whether it's our child having the experience or we as parents are having a painful experience of working all day, getting home, and our kid is really angry and really spun out and really overwhelmed by a homework assignment. And now we're starting job number 2, right? Which is, and maybe even job number 3, which is I have to be the homework helper. I have to, for me, no math, really approach my own insecurities about that, right? And I have to be the regulator in chief. I have to manage my own emotional experience. So it's a heavy lift, right? So we have this painful experience. We interpret and we generalize based on that painful experience. We hold limiting beliefs. Like a child might say, I'm never going to be good at math. No matter how hard I try, I just stink at this, right? For us, our limiting belief for parents might be, my kid is never going to go to college, or my kid is never going to get married because they are so emotionally volatile that I don't know that they're ever going to be able to do this, right? Like, what is their life going to look like? Limiting beliefs, which lead to fear-based choices, right? So now I'm in fight or flight because you might live in my basement till you're 45 and I'm threatening, I'm consequencing all over the place, which is leading to more painful experiences, more limiting beliefs, more fear-based choices, and round we go, or up the ladder we go, right? And it can happen very quickly, right? Like we get this skewed thinking and then we act based on that skewed thinking. So what we really want to do and focus on, and for those of you who are interested in doing this on a really personal level, right? For you, all of us are slightly different. All our relationships with our kids are different. We want to work on building our window of tolerance, right? So that when we are working with a highly emotional child, right? When we have a super feeler in our family, or maybe we're super feelers ourselves, right? We want to grow our ability to stay within that window of tolerance where we can problem solve. We can have flexible and fluid thinking about what to do about a situation. We can feel our stress. This is not I'm in a peaceful place. This is, I recognize the stress, I feel it, but alongside it, I can have acceptance and kindness, compassion for my child and myself, right? It's a warm-hearted, safe feeling, right? Not I'm enjoying this, but a safe feeling versus moving into hyper arousal, which is our fight or flight. Here I might be yelling, I might be running away, I might be, right, like overwhelmed, panicky, lots of physical sensations. I'm in hyper arousal, right? And we've all seen our kids there. Or I move into hypo arousal, right? Kind of numb out. I move into energy conservation mode, right? Because I'm so overwhelmed potentially by my child, and I feel like I've tried everything I know to do. And now it's like I'm standing in the middle of a storm and I'm just letting it go, but I have lost my ability to act. Right. So I kind of think of this one as like hibernation, right? Our system gets the cue that there's not enough resources and we better just go to sleep, right? Like let's just sleep through this one, right? So we can move into that low energy, get in the bed, not be able to move kind of feeling, right? So we can work with our ability to help ourselves first and then our child after that to build this window of tolerance. Okay, so why is this so hard with some of our kiddos? Why do other kids seem to do this a little easier, right? So I love to remind us that the brain has different executive functions. So every ADHD kiddo that comes to me has a slightly different presentation because not all of them struggle in all the same areas, right? Some of them are actually fairly great at certain like sustaining effort or something, but their emotional regulation is woo, like all over the place or very volatile, right? Sometimes kids are good at monitoring their actions and even good at like checking things off of their homework list, but making a reasonable plan, right? Prioritizing what to do first and how to do it, like that gets really difficult. So, emotions, modulating our emotions are one of those executive functions, right? Including being able to monitor and regulate my actions. This is why emotions and climbing that ladder are so hard for kids with ADHD and any executive functioning, right? So there are some common emotional qualities that cue me in. I'm like, whoop, this kid might have, right? Executive functioning difficulty is their emotions are quicker. Like they happen a little bit more uh, uh, quickly, quicker, stronger. They get this really big surge, and it takes them a longer period of time to downregulate. So when they get hyper aroused, right, it happens a lot quicker. The feelings can be quite intense. Like their feeling makes sense, but you're like, why are we at an 8 out of 10? Like over that, it's maybe a size 4 problem, but their emotional reaction is a size 8. And it takes them longer, right, for that to come down back into that. So they're more easily thrown into fight or flight. They can have this quality of perseverating or ruminating on the problem, which tends to make it more difficult to downregulate. They can get rigid and have an inability to flexibly problem solve a situation. And they can't quite monitor themselves or take other perspectives, right? So relationally, it can be challenging when there's conflicts because they're not tracking you and how you're experiencing this, right? Or it's over for them and they feel much, much better. You just feel like you've been like you're out on the battlefield just laying down like oh right, and they're ready to move on, like hey, what's for dinner, or they want to play or they want to hang out, and you're thinking I need 4 hours to recover from you. So these are some of the qualities that can be common with kiddos that have executive functioning difficulties. It's important to note here that this is no one's fault, right? Like some of this is neurology. So we're not coming away from this parenting seminar saying like everything is because you did it wrong, right? This is, wow, I'm working with a very different system. And by the way, ADHD is very hereditary, right? So it's very likely, some of us as parents also like struggle with some of these areas as well. So it makes it really difficult, right, to be able to manage a conflictual moment. So I really, really, really like DBT. After many, many years of working in attachment-based work, sort of the cornerstone of co-regulation, I kept thinking, wow, like I just need some skills, right? Like I like want to dig my teeth into something that I can actually do in addition to the relationship, right? And I found DBT to be this beautiful combination of acceptance and validation, right? Like incredible relationally connected and about behavior change, right? It's both and. That's the beautiful part. Dialectic means two sort of opposing things being true at the same time. I can love you, accept you, be attuned to you, and teach you how to do the layup, right? I'm not going to just throw you out on the court and hope your body figures it out, right? Like I'm going to teach you about your brain. I'm going to give you skills, things you can actually try that help you move from hyperarousal to back to your window of tolerance, right? How to build energy in your body if you've collapsed and you're frozen and you're stuck. So these are some of the elements of DBT that drew me to it. I liked that combination, the balance of both. And so today we're going to talk, there's 4 core concepts in DBT. We work on mindfulness, we work on distress tolerance, emotional regulation, and then we pull it all together in our interpersonal effectiveness. How do we do these things in relationship with other people? So today we're just going to talk about distress tolerance, right? And we're going to talk about some concepts for how to manage and begin to work with our own distress tolerance so that our kids get that benefit. So I wanted to check, Debbie, how are we doing? Before I launch into that, any
That's
other
such
thoughts?
perfect timing because there
Oh,
was a question that I know you know how to answer. Is DBT for adolescents only or adults and parents too? And I go
everybody.
ahead and yes, everyone. I will also add that my son went through DBT program twice, and it was a requirement for the parents to also have their own DBT sessions. So I will tell you that it has made me a better human. One of my favorite words, as Nicole knows, we talk about all the time, is dialectic, because two things can be equal and opposite and true at the same time. And it allow us to have that protective factor of that flexible thinking that Nicole talked about. So I'm excited for her to share the rest. So thank you, Laura, for the
Great.
question, because at the end of the day, as she said, it's about skills, right?
Yes, it's about skills, and it's about if you can walk away knowing as much about your pattern and your triggers, right, as I might as a therapist, then you have that competency, right? So DBT in some of its very skills training form is best for adolescents and above because we have formal operational thinking. We can do a little bit better job of holding two equal and opposite things at the same time. But we do even have a program about just emotional regulation and working with super feels for younger kiddos, right? Some of those more advanced concepts are harder, but we can adapt some of that emotional regulation work. We call our group like super feelers, right? To teach them about their brain. We can do it for somewhat younger kids.
Sorry, before you go on, there was also a question about, is this for any parents or parents with children with ADHD?
Any parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
This is really just skills around, I was going to say that as well. Yeah. It's really
yeah,
just skills. So we can get into it, and I think it'll be helpful for you.
yeah. I think it's also helpful. You guys have classes for educators. So let's say you're not even a parent yourself, but you work with kids a lot, or you are the leader of a team. Anyone that works with other humans needs these relational skills of being able to regulate myself and be able to be in partnership regulating, right? So there's sort of auto regulation, which is when I can do it on my own. And then there's co regulation, where I can stay in connection and in relationship to regulate. And, a healthy life, good mental health is being able to do both. Sometimes we have to be able to regulate ourselves and do it on our own. And other times we have to stay present. We don't want to run away. We don't want to lose the relationship in order to regulate, right? So
Mhm.
I think it's for anybody. Yeah.
And I have one other question, and Laura, I'm going to ask your question a little bit later after she goes through some of the skills, but I promise I'll get to it. But there was another question about the DBTs before we move on. So are there certain programs specifically for DBT, or is this through certain therapists?
Yeah, it depends. There's, several programs in our area that will do, so there are full DBT programs where it will be 16 to 24 weeks of fairly intensive work. So the client participating might have 2 or 3 days a week where they're working on skills training. Then there's a parent training component to that. And they sort of bring that all in-house. I have tended to do it in a more outpatient way. So, some clients have a very well established relationship with an individual therapist, but they're kind of missing those skills, or the parents want training and their kid has a great individual therapist. And so we will provide it as an adjunct to the work that we do. We hold both skills groups, right? And allow a client to stay in touch with their individual therapist, or we will provide that on an individual basis. All the clinicians in my practice are trained in DBT. And so we provide parent consultations, right? 90% of the time, your child is not going to have their tantrum in my office, right? Like we work to do controlled stress, right? So we can activate a little bit of that in our room, but most of the time you're the one that is front and center when a big meltdown is happening. So if I can teach you everything I would do in that moment, specific to your family and your nervous system, then you are better able to support them at home in those big, big moments. So we do a lot of parent consultations through my practice. Yeah.
And it's fair to say, Nicole, that though there is a DBT requirement, meaning you have to be trained and certified
Yes,
in DBT. So it is fair to say, on a generic level, that when you ask about is there a quote unquote separate programs, it is a training that you have to be certified for, and there are
that's right.
specific DBT only practices, and then there are
Yeah.
others that are trained in DBT. So I just want to say that generically.
For clarifying that. Yes.
Yeah.
Nope. Absolutely true. Yes. Yes. All right. So we'll move into some distress tolerance specifically. So I find it very, very helpful to practice with regularity stress scaling, right? So I can get a sense, I can help clients, I can know within myself, where am I? Where is my child on their stress scale? For me, my scale goes from very low stress, right? Like I'm hanging out, like watching YouTube, laying on my couch, or I am like taking my AP exam, right? So very, very high stress zone. Distress tolerance skills within DBT are a specific set of skills that we deploy when we are at an 8, 9, or 10. 8, 9, or 10 on our stress scale is when we have tipped over into hyper or hypoarousal, either one. We've gone too far and we are no longer available for learning, right? Nothing can happen in that zone. I always say, which brain are you talking to, right? Like, because when we get to that stage, we need to regulate the nervous system. You have a flipped lid, you have a really scared kiddo, you have a kiddo that's in fight or flight, and this brain is not a thinking brain. This is a feeling caged animal, dog backed into a corner that feels scared. Like, totally different set of skills are needed when our child or we ourselves are at an 8, 9, or 10, right? So these skills are sort of rapid. They don't take very long, but they just give us a little window, right? So some of these skills might be a certain breathing exercise. I'm always really cautious with that because how many times have you been told to breathe? Right. And some people don't, they find it quite annoying, or it causes them to pay attention to something that stresses them out even further. But I tend to think of it as more like a sensory awareness skill, right? So we'll go into a couple of those specifics, but it's reorienting ourselves from the thoughts that built the emotion, that built the physical symptoms. I want to move back into my body in a sensory way that is not so threatening. Right. So I might scan my environment visually and see how many blue things I can count. Right. Because I am just moving from over hyperactivation to neutral. Right. I don't really have a thought or a feeling about how many blue items are in my room. I might not have a thought or a feeling about what my left baby toe feels like right now. What's funny is as soon as I said that, all of you thought for the first time, maybe ever, what is my left baby toe doing? Like, I don't even know, right? Or just to tune into that. Neutrality, it moves us down a notch. We are not trying with distress tolerance skills to move from an 8, 9, or 10 to a 1. So people will say it didn't work. I'm like, did we get to a 7.5? And it definitely worked because we're trying to move back into some state of regulation so we can do better flexible problem solving, right? So distress tolerance skills are short acting. We use them for a short period of time to move from hyper or hypo arousal to get back to a problem solving zone. Tip here, any distress tolerance skills that we use longer than 30 minutes have become avoidance, right? So we are probably back in our window of tolerance, but we are now avoiding reapproaching that thing that spun us out in the first place, right? So when your kid says, I have to relax, I have to watch 7 episodes of this show, or I'm not going to be okay, up to 30 minutes, I agree with you. Let's get our brains calmed down. But then we have to reapproach the thing that was stressing us out. So the point here, stress scaling, incredibly important to know which skill and which intervention we might want to do, right? If we're at an 8, 9, or 10, regulating our nervous system down back into our window of tolerance is the only choice. It's the only option here. So we've been talking about our 8, 9s, and 10s, which I refer to as our flipped lid. Daniel Siegel did some beautiful work, and he brought it into a very visual, easy, understandable format for kids. And he calls it the hand brain. He takes his hand like this. He tucks his thumb in. I don't know if you can see that. And he curves his fingers around and we have a brain, right? So here's your little brain. And if we have executive functioning difficulties, this little knuckle here is our amygdala, right? Your amygdala may be much more sensitive. It might be easier to trigger you, to have you be stimulated toward fear or protection for yourself, right? And so you get bigger surges of feelings from your emotional control center of your brain. Remember, that's my thumb. This is emotions. And look how our thinking brain, literally right behind our eyebrows, hugs our feeling brain, right? When we can problem solve, we're having the emotion, it's there, but we have our thoughts integrated with it. When we get overwhelmed, we move into 8, 9s, and 10s, hyper and hypoarousal, we have flipped our lid, right? So this is that brain that is not worth discussing things with because there isn't a thinking brain to engage with. Why did you do that? What's your plan? Like, what are you going to do? Right? None of these questions are helpful to our child in that moment or to ourselves in that moment because we can't think. So the strategies for self-calming, we talked about the colors as one example of that, right? This is what we do to calm that trigger, right? Calm that overwhelm and reintegrate our brain. right? Like sometimes we'll notice this when our child goes from really, really angry to you can start to see them tear up, right? Like that lets you know we're moving from sympathetic activation, like I'm hyper aroused, to back to vagal activation, right? Where they are calmer. It's a little sign of safety because to tear up a little bit is vulnerable, right? And so when they move from this angry to like tears, even if it's like angry tears still, that's our cue. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, okay, right? We're getting there. We're getting there. Be safe, be gentle, allow that brain to keep integrating, keep coming down, keep calming down, right? That's a sign if it's available to us to back off, keep creating safety. It's working. We're moving into that window of tolerance again, right? Other self-calming activities that I really like are tense and relaxation. Any student can do this in the middle of class and nobody even knows they're doing it. So if you can clench and tighten, like it's your bicep or your thigh muscles, the biggest muscles in your body, just tense them up to the point where they kind of shake and burn a little bit. And when they get to that shake and burn place, right? And just hold it like 5 or 6 extra seconds and then let it go. This is a little brain hack. It tells our brain, oh, the fight is over. I'm an antelope and I'm running away from the lion. And I'm like, oh, I made it. Right? That's that little release. We can create it ourselves. Build the tension, hold it, hold it, hold it, let it shake a little bit, release. Little brain hack triggers our brain to think, okay, we're not in as much danger. Similar thing, we can activate our peripheral vision, right? So if I'm an antelope, I'm running away from a lion, right? I have to be able to see very clearly in front of me, right? I have to have very clear vision so I don't trip, I don't fall, I can get away, right? I don't need to know what's going on out here, right? I got to go forward. So just a little trick you can do in class. Nobody knows you're doing it. Look straight forward, find a focal point in front of you, and then just activate. What is something you can see as far out to the right without moving my eyes off my focal point? What is something I can see far off to my left without moving my focal point? Little brain hack. I'm tricking my brain, right? We're not running. We're okay. We can expand our view. See, these are very simple little techniques, right? To remind our brain that we are safe and to come back. If you are able to join the parenting seminar, you want more information, we will go much, much, much more in depth with regards to how to make a very individualized plan for you for moving back into your window of tolerance, right? So if we can also remove the stimulus that is stressful for no more than 30 minutes, that's okay. Please remember as parents, sometimes just our face alone is the stimulus because we are the reminder that you did not do what you were supposed to do, right? Like, or I'm going to remind you of that thing that you're kind of afraid of. So it's okay to move away out of their visual field, right? You're not giving up, you're coming back. It just lets everything calm down, right? If your child is, has flipped their lid and they're behaving in such a way that's really triggering to you and you are noticing yourself move into hyper arousal and you're, getting to that place within yourself, remove the stimulus, step away for a second, right? Because that only protects both of you. Right. And then we're going to work to create a new emotion, which in DBT they call opposite action. Right. So if my natural reaction to fear is to want to avoid, opposite action would be to lean in just a little bit, like approach just a little bit, do the opposite. Right. If sadness is to collapse and go inward, it would be to risk co-regulating, to say to someone safe, I am so sad. I'm just so sad, right? Maybe that's all you do, but you're not collapsing and isolating. right? If you're angry and we're doing like, I think of anger as like rocket fuel. It's like very energetic, right? It wants to do something, right? Then I might just not act, right? Just don't do anything physical, right? Just feel that rocket fuel course through you. Let it go, let it roll, right? Watch what it does in your body, right? Almost like an allergen that's coming in and you're watching it do its little reaction and it's having all these physical effects, and then like let it roll without needing to act upon it. Okay. So those are just some ideas, initial ideas for dealing with a flipped lid. Oh my goodness.
Nicole, real
Yes.
quickly, we got a comment, a real quick comment. Just
Yes.
yes, I am a reminder, and usually for more than 30 minutes, just my face. Can I wear a mask or funny hat? I think that might be a
I love
rhetorical question,
this.
but I love the idea.
Yes, it depends on your kid. Some kids, because that's an opposite emotion, right? Like if you and your kid are like locked in a battle and you do something silly with your face and that breaks the tension and you laugh or whatever, like that's lovely, like that's gorgeous. Some kids don't respond well to that. So it depends on your sense of humor and if that's natural to you and your kid's relationship and sort of what they need. So sometimes it's removal, sometimes, yeah, you could do something really playful, which is unexpected or surprising to shift the emotional experience in that moment. For sure. I love that idea. Yes. Any and all options. So, why should we tolerate painful feelings? Why should we even do this? Right. Well, it's because pain is a part of life, right? We definitely cannot avoid it if we want to have relationships, right? Because that's part of it. The full human experience means we will love and we will lose and we will fall out of connection, right? And have to work to get back in connection. And that's a normal part of human relationships. Right. So allowing that to be part of what we talk about in our families, like, oh, we're really out of sync right now, right? Or like, I was so up in my feelings this morning. Like, I was not doing my best parenting, right? Like, just going to apologize to you now and let's come back and rejoin, reconnect. It's not the rupture that's as dangerous as the lack of acknowledgement and ability to find our way back, right? That is to tolerate painful feelings, come back, hear the other person's experience of the painful feeling, what these things were like, right? And to come back together to co regulate. So if we can't deal with our pain, right? If we are so afraid of it or it's so uncomfortable for us that we want to avoid and or defend ourselves from it, we will act more impulsively and we end up either hurting ourselves or hurting others, right? Or just inevitably just not getting what we want, right? It doesn't feel as satisfying. So coming back to this idea of needing both skills, like I'm going to teach you how to do the layup and we're going to have this amazing team feeling. And if you miss it the first time, we're still all going to like support you. And right, like we're going to have both acceptance and connection, validation, co-regulation, and skills and behavior change. So we're moving on to this acceptance piece. What is it? Right? I love this analogy here. Non-acceptance would be, oh, it's raining outside. I don't like the rain. I wish it wasn't raining. My day would be so much better if it wasn't raining. It's so ruined. Everything is like this. It's always like this. Why does it always rain when all I wanted to do is be sunny? This is just the worst, right? That is non-acceptance. The other side is it's raining. Yep. Yep. Right. My kid's acting a fool. Yep. Right. Like there it is. Right. Or there's their trigger. Or there they go again. Right. Or here I go again. This is part of it. Right. Now, notice in here, when we're accepting that it's raining, we're not saying, this is great. I love this. I'm so glad it's raining. We're not saying that. We're saying, yep. Right. And when I say, yes, it is raining, from that place, I might be able to like go get my raincoat, like park closer to the door that I have to run in, right? Like I might be able to problem solve some of the parts that are uncomfortable about it raining and do it in an effective, more efficient way. Right. When I'm over here just mad that it's raining and all up in my feelings about it, it doesn't change the fact that I'm cold and wet. I'm now just really miserable while I'm cold and wet, right? I'm making that worse for myself. So acceptance is not about giving in, giving up, saying it's always going to be like this. It's simply changing our relationship with the truth of this moment. It just is what it is in this moment. I just picked my kid up from school. I was all excited to see them because I finished my work early so I could try to have this cool connection. And they're about as grumpy as they could be, right? They're just not available and this stinks. And why do I have to act like that? They have such a negative attitude. How are they ever going to be successful in life, right? Here go my thoughts. Here come my feelings, right? So can we just change our relationship with the truth, which is, wow, my kid is super grumpy. Okay. Another truth. I'm disappointed. I wanted to connect. I was getting ready to go get the Christmas tree, or I was excited to like cook dinner. And in my head, we were going to have this really awesome conversation, and they're not as available. Can I sit with compassion, acceptance in myself? Yep. That's sad. That's a missed opportunity, right? And I can acknowledge both my sadness and my child's grumpiness, right? And in this way, I didn't get on the ladder, right? It doesn't mean I'm so thrilled that my child is grumpy. It means I haven't now started this story in my head that it's always going to be like this, that they need to change their behavior right now so that I can have the thing that I wanted, which is still okay that you want it, right? It's just not available right now. And we're more likely to get into co-regulation if we're not in conflict. And maybe there's still an opportunity later on, right, to reconnect if there's more availability, if nervous systems, right, like are more regulated. All right. So changing reality first requires that we accept what it is, what is happening, right? So in DBT, there's a phrase that pain is inevitable. Like these things will happen, disappointment will happen, something, sad will happen in our lives. But when we stay in the this shouldn't be happening, right? That increases our suffering, right? It's like they call it the pain of two arrows, right? You can't stop the pain of that first thing. My kid's not available, and I really wanted to do this cool, fun thing today. And now I'm telling myself I'm a bad parent, or they're never going to be successful. Like all these horrible stories are being told in my head about it. That increases my suffering. Now I have two arrows coming at me, right? So we look at this as sort of like willfulness, right? Like we can see this when our kids do it. I can see it in myself when I'm refusing to tolerate a situation, or I'm giving up fine. Right? Like that is also a form of willfulness, right? Trying to change a situation that cannot be changed in that particular moment, or refusing to change something that should be changed, right? The opposite of doing what works versus accepting the truth of that moment, not doing any more or any less. I like talking here for just a moment about kiddos that are anxious, right? Like sometimes doing no more, no less is letting our child work their distress, letting our child sit in a bit of their discomfort so that they are stretching that muscle. They're stretching their ability to expand their window of tolerance. So sometimes allowing our kids to be distressed and let them work through that is how we can get out of the way of their ability to build resilience. I'm noticing the time. Are we done at 10 or are we done at 10:15?
10.
10. Got you. Okay. So I'm going to skip this one about riding the wave, like how to be with emotions. But to come to this last concept, and this is our final slide, is how to be with and expand our window of tolerance, right, for uncomfortable emotion. Right. So Tara Brach is a wonderful meditation teacher and clinician in our area who just does beautiful, beautiful work. And she has a process she describes as RAIN. And it's this process of being able to be with something that is overwhelming. So first is to recognize, right? So I need to recognize that I am feeling sad or disappointed, that I'm disconnected from my kid, or my kid has just lashed out at me and it's coming at me and it's hard, right? To allow, that's that acceptance, to just accept, yeah, my kid is yelling. They're super out of control right now. And maybe it feels a little scary, and maybe it feels sad, and maybe I also feel overwhelmed by it, but I'm just aware of those emotions. I'm just riding that wave. Yep, there it is. I see it. I'm allowing it to crest and fall, right? I'm just surfing a little bit, rolling with it rather than trying to hold on to it or change it or, right, like fight against it or suppress it. I'm just allowing it to be. And then with a gentle kindness, a compassionate curiosity, I call my office the no judgment zone, right? Like if we weren't going to judge you, what might we learn about this feeling, this gentle, curious attention to why that feeling is coming, right? We might ask questions like, what am I afraid of? What am I struggling with in this moment? What hurts? What hurts? And then to bring a loving presence, to bring an awareness of what I might need, of what I could do in this moment to bring my system back into a window of tolerance that would be kind to myself and supportive to myself. All right.
Mm-hmm. Can I
So
add one quick thing?
do it.
So I've followed Tara for a long time. I've gone to a lot of her sessions, in-person sessions. And one of the things I love about the end, I've kind of made it my own. It's like I can recognize, allow, and investigate in myself, like how that's feeling or what I'm noticing. But I kind of changed the end to not me. Like I don't have to be. I don't. This doesn't have to be me. Like this can be somebody else. So it's just
Mhm.
another a way to think about that. I think nurture is great, and then just noticing like, hey, this doesn't have to be something that I'm reacting to right now. It's almost giving yourself permission.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. Yep. So if this was interesting to you, this is just an initial like flavor, please feel free to reach out by email. Consider joining us for the parenting class. Know that you're online with lots of other moms and dads and educators and other people right now who do this dance, know this cycle, and are all working a little bit on their own part. So if the one thing you walk away from today with is self-compassion and acceptance that you really are doing the very best you can in any given moment, that's a nice place to start. Because when we are having those negative self-thoughts, we're already starting, right? We're on the
Mm-hmm.
ladder, and that just leads to more conflict. So,
And we had a question from Laura that I wanted to make sure to go back to because I think it's important for everyone. So her child, she said, was resistant going to see a therapist and asked, what can she do to improve the situation, knowing that there's that resistance? And I know you talked, I'll just kind of tee it up in this way. I know you talked a lot about modeling and coping out loud and
mhm.
sharing how you're modeling. And so maybe you want to talk a little bit about that or however you'd like to answer that question.
Absolutely. I like what popped into my head first too is sort of any of you who are familiar with this space model of working with childhood anxiety, it really is, we don't have to require our children to do anything. We are allowed to decide we are changing our interaction and our pattern in any kind of conflict cycle or any kind of participation in our child's anxiety behaviors in a way that allows for healing. So I would say just start with yourself, right? So to what you were saying, Deb, it really is about modeling, but not modeling just so they'll change, right? Like, but it only takes one person in a system, a family system, to shift. And then, like it or not, everybody else kind of has to adapt. So if you're no longer climbing the ladder and taking care of yourself and doing other things, your child will notice that. They'll experience that. In the beginning, you might get this really uncomfortable extinction burst where they're trying, like they're really pulling for this old pattern, like, no, we're going to fight, right? Or whatever it is that they do. But you're changing regardless of what they're doing. And in that way, there is regulation in the house. If one nervous system is regulating, it's really hard for the other to ping off of it because there's nothing coming back at them. So your ability to be in a window of tolerance is naturally regulating to your child. It just is over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think it's a perfect way to end. And where you started was that we don't want to make fear-based choices. We want to service our values and not our fears. And we can do that when we ourselves notice what regulates or dysregulates ourselves. And then how can we make the choice first, like putting our oxygen mask on before our children. So I love everything that you shared. We hope that so many of you will join us for our workshop in January/February. And thank you so much to everybody for being here. And hopefully we'll see you after the holidays. Have a wonderful holiday, everybody. And we'll see you in January for our next webinar. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thanks for your time. This was wonderful. Thank
Take
you.
care, everyone. Have a good day.